Welcome, my bountiful friends. It's time to put out the campfire, pick up your bindle, put on your hat, and get on over to the ranch, because today we're going to be delving deep into the human soul in John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. This story centres on a pair of itinerant workers in California during the Great Depression who had taken up a new job on a ranch, having fled their last job due to one of the pair's inability to function correctly in society. They live from hand to mouth, but hold a shared dream of an idyllic future in their hearts and minds. As usual, I'll be diving deep into the psychological shadows, and as always, there will be as many spoilers as there are dead mice and rabbits. And there will also be plenty of opinions too, so you have been warned. And before we begin in earnest, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's greatly appreciated. Steinbeck, a Californian native, was 34 when he wrote Of Mice and Men. He had written 3 novels prior, with his third novel, Tortilla Flats, being his first critical and commercial success. It came out in 1935, selling well, and was even adapted into a film. The story of Mice and Men, his fourth novel, emerged from a confluence of his personal experiences as a teen and in his 20s, as well as historical and contemporary circumstances of the time. The novella was inspired by his time spent working particularly as a labourer on ranches in California's Salinas Valley during the 1910s and 1920s. These formative years exposed him to the harsh realities of itinerant workers, men who travelled from farm to farm, often alone, seeking temporary employment in order to merely sustain themselves. Steinbeck himself lived as a bindle stiff, as they were often called, carrying his belongings wrapped in cloth. This is the lifestyle of the main characters, and the title was drawn from Robert Burns's 1785 poem To a Mouse, which contains the line, "The best laid schemes of mice and men gang often agley," or in plain English, the best laid plans often go wrong. Apologies to all Scottish people. Steinbeck saw this sentiment as emblematic of the fragile dreams held by the working class during the harrowing and desperate times of the Great Depression, which was a decade-long deep recession that was a direct result of the Wall Street crash of 1929, which saw swathes of businesses go bankrupt overnight, thereby instantly and drastically reducing the job market, as well as wiping out most people's savings. Steinbeck began writing the novel in 1936, aiming to craft a play novelette, a hybrid form that could function both as a novella and a stage play. Each chapter was structured as a scene, confined to a single location with minimal transitions, making it easily adaptable for the stage. He completed the manuscript in 1937, despite initial doubts about its scope and clarity. The resulting novel is tiny, coming in at just over 100 pages in most print versions, and Steinbeck himself even expressed concern to his agents that the work might be too small in subject matter. The book was published on February 25th, 1937 by Kovici Frieda. It was selected for the Book of the Month Club prior to release, which helped generate significant pre-publication buzz. Over 117,000 copies were sold before its official publication, which is a remarkable feat for any novel at any time, let alone one being released in the middle of a severe recession. By April of that year, it had landed on national bestseller lists, and Steinbeck received unexpectedly large royalty checks, which surprised him given his modest expectations. Following its success in print, he collaborated with playwright George S. Kaufman to adapt the novella into the intended stage production. The play premiered on Broadway in November 1937, running for 207 performances and winning the New York Drama's Critics Circle Award. Again, something very unusual for any novel to achieve. The cast of characters of Mice and Men are few in number and on the surface fairly ubiquitous, but there's a hidden depth here. So first up we have George Milton, who is the main protagonist, a co-protagonist. He's a small, wiry, intelligent migrant worker. He acts as caretaker and protector of Lenny and dreams of owning a piece of land and being his own boss. He is torn between compassion and the harsh realities of survival. Lenny Small is the other protagonist. He is a physically strong but mentally disabled man. He has a childlike demeanour and obsession with soft things such as rabbits and fabric. He doesn't understand his own strength, which leads to tragic consequences. He's deeply devoted to George and their shared dream. Candy is an aging ranch handyman with one hand. He is afraid of being classed as useless due to his age and condition and being cut loose. He offers his life savings to join George and Lenny's dream. He owns an old dog who is shot, which is a moment of terrible foreshadowing of future events. Curly is the boss's aggressive, confrontational son. He's a former boxer and is prone to picking fights, especially with larger men like Lenny. He's jealous and possessive of his wife. Curly's wife is the only prominent female character, and tellingly remains unnamed throughout. She is flirtatious and lonely, desperate for attention and connection. She is treated as a temptress and dismissed by the men. Her death marks the novel's turning point. Slim is a skilled mule driver and is respected by all at the ranch. He is calm, insightful, and almost a spiritual presence. He is sympathetic towards George and Lenny and serves as the moral compass of the novel. Crooks is a black stable hand who is isolated from the others at the ranch due to racial segregation. He is bitter and defensive due to suffering lifelong discrimination. He is briefly hopeful when he hears of George and Lenny's dream farm. Carlson is a ranch hand who pressures Candy into letting him shoot his old dog. He is emotionally detached, practical, and an unsentimental man. The boss is Curly's father, and he is unnamed. He briefly appears when George and Lenny first arrive. Even in this brief scene, he's shown to be a suspicious and confrontational man, and this sets the tone for life at the ranch. During the Great Depression, two homeless wandering migrant workers, George Milton and Lenny Small, are travelling aimlessly across California seeking employment wherever they can find it. George is sharp and protective, while Lenny is physically strong but mentally disabled, with a childlike demeanour and a fixation on soft things. The pair share a dream of owning a piece of land where Lenny can tend rabbits, a vision that sustains them through their hardship. The story begins near Soledad when George and Lenny camp by the Salinas River before reporting to a nearby ranch they are signed up for. George instructs Lenny to return to their camping spot if any trouble arises, which is always a possibility, as Lenny's unintended social transgressions has already resulted in them being chased out from their last job. At the new ranch, they meet several workers. Candy, an aging handyman, Curly, the boss's aggressive son, Curly's flirtatious wife, Slim, a respected mule driver, and Crooks, the isolated black stable hand. George and Lenny quickly settle into their work, but tension quickly rises. Curly, who is insecure about his size, targets the much larger Lenny. George, realizing the danger of the situation, warns Lenny to avoid Curly, and especially his wife. Lenny receives a puppy from Slim, which he adores. Meanwhile, Candy overhears George and Lenny discussing their dream and offers his savings to join them, giving the plan a sense of possibility. Conflict escalates when Curly deliberately manages to pick a fight with Lenny, who crushes Curly's hand in self-defense. Slim convinces Curly not to report the incident. Later, Lenny accidentally kills his puppy in the barn whilst petting him. Curly's wife finds him distraught and tries to comfort him. She allows Lenny to stroke her hair, but when he grabs too tightly, she screams in pain. Lenny panics and unintentionally breaks her neck whilst trying to stop her screaming. Realizing the gravity of his actions, Lenny flees to the riverbank as he was instructed to by George. The ranch workers discover the wife's body and promptly form a lynch mob. George, understanding the full horror of what will happen, slips away and heads to the riverbank and meets Lenny there. He comforts the distraught Big Goof by telling him their dream one last time, then shoots Lenny in the back of the head to spare him from the forthcoming violent death. The novel ends with George left alone, his dream shattered. Slim, the only one who understands George's decision, quietly leads him away as the other men remain confused as to what happened. The novel is notable for its spare, economical style and its evocative atmosphere, both of which serve to heighten the emotional impact of the human-driven narrative. Steinbeck originally intended the story to be a play novelette, so this hybrid form deeply influences the book's stylistic choices from the get-go. Each chapter indeed unfolds like a scene in a play, confined to a single setting with minimal transitions, allowing the story to be staged with little adaptation. This structured precision contributes to the book's taut pacing and dramatic tension. The prose is stripped back and fairly plain. There is little in way of embellishment, accurately reflecting the vernacular of working people at the time and the bleakness of their impoverished environment. Any ornate language is avoided, with concrete depictions and realistic dialogue the order of the day. The bunkhouse, as an example, is described with stage direction clarity. The walls were whitewashed and the floor unpainted. This factual tone lends the narrative a sense of immediacy and authenticity, as if the reader is observing events unfold in real time. Dialogue is the central role in character development and atmosphere. The dialect of Depression-era migrant workers, complete with their colloquialisms and grammatical errors, roots the characters in their social context. Phrases like "gonna get the jack together" and "lift off the fat of the lamb" reflect both the characters' aspirations and their limited education. The use of dialect also reinforces the isolation and marginalisation experienced by the ranch hands, deepening the sense of realism. Atmospherically, the novel oscillates between tranquility and tension. The opening and closing scenes at the Salinas Rivers are serene, practically Edenic, with lush natural imagery that contrasts sharply with the harshness of human life on the ranch. These moments of peace serve as emotional bookends, framing the story with a fragile sense of hope and innocence. In contrast, the bunkhouse and barn scenes are often charged with unease, shaped by power dynamics, prejudice, and the constant threat of violence. The overall tone is sombre and restrained. There are moments of tenderness and dread woven throughout. Steinbeck's objective narration avoids overt commentary, allowing readers to interpret the moral weight of events themselves. This stylistic neutrality enhances the emotional resonance, especially in the final scene. The minimalist prose, theatrical structure, authentic dialogue, and symbolic imagery all combine to create an atmosphere that is both intimate and oppressive. The result is a narrative that feels immediate, immersive, and emotionally raw. The novel explores several interwoven themes that reflect social, emotional, and existential conditions of Depression-era America. Each theme emerges organically from the characters' interactions and the stark landscape they inhabit. One of the most pervasive themes is that of loneliness and isolation. Nearly every character in the novella suffers from some form of emotional or social estrangement. Candy, the aging ranch hand, is physically disabled and emotionally tethered to his old dog, whose death symbolises the disposability of the weak. Crooks, the black stable hand, is segregated from the others and lives in a separate room, his isolation compounded by racial prejudice. Curly's wife, unnamed throughout the novel, is trapped in a loveless marriage and seeks connection in a world that objectifies and mistrusts her. Even George, despite his companionship with Lenny, is burdened by the emotional toll of constant vigilance and sacrifice. Steinbeck presents loneliness not as a personal failing, but as a systemic consequence of economic hardship and social fragmentation. Closely tied to this is the theme of broken dreams. George and Lenny's dream of owning a farm represents a yearning for autonomy, safety and dignity. It is a dream that Candy and Crooks briefly share, suggesting it has universal appeal. Yet the dream is ultimately unattainable, shattered by Lenny's inability to function in the world and the brutal realities of society. Curly's wife also harbours a dream of becoming a movie star, which was derailed by circumstances and manipulation. These failed dreams underscore the futility of hope in a society that offers little room for upward mobility or personal fulfillment. Power and powerlessness form another central theme. The ranch operates as a microcosm of hierarchical society, where strength, physical, economic, or social, determine one's fate. Curly wields power through his status as the boss's son, though his insecurity makes him volatile. Slim, by contrast, commands respect through competence and calm authority. Lenny's physical strength gives him momentary power, but his mental disability renders him vulnerable. Candy's, Crook's, and Curly's wife each experience powerlessness due to age, race, or gender. Those on the margins often seek to assert control in whatever limited way they can. Crooks taunts Lenny. Curly's wife threatens Crooks, but these moments are fleeting and often self-destructive. Finally, there's the theme of fraternity and male friendship, which offers a counterpoint to the novel's bleakness. George and Lenny's bond is rare and deeply felt, providing a glimmer of hope in an otherwise harsh world. Their relationship is built on mutual dependence, storytelling, and shared dreams. Yet even this connection is not immune to the forces of violence and despair. George's final act, killing Lenny to spare him from a worse fate, underscores the tragic limits of loyalty and compassion in a world governed by cruelty. In sum, Of Mice and Men presents a layered thematic landscape in which loneliness, broken dreams, power dynamics, and social exclusion converge. Upon its release, Of Mice and Men was met with widespread acclaim, further accelerating Steinbeck's literary career to national recognition. Critics praised its emotional depth, structural precision, and ability to convey profound human truths in a compact form. The New Republic lauded the novella's effective compression and straight and rapid movements, while the Saturday Review of Literature commended its understated realism and character-driven storytelling. Over time, it has become a mainstay in educational curricula, especially in the United States and the United Kingdom. Its accessible language, compact length, and emotionally resonant themes made it a frequent choice for high school and college syllabi. The novella's design as a stage play also gave it extra reach and adaptability that has contributed to its legacy. It was successfully staged on Broadway and has been turned into school and theatre plays across the English-speaking world and has been adapted into several films. Internationally, the book found lasting resonance, particularly in Japan and the UK, where its themes of alienation and unreachable dreams strike a universal chord. It has been translated into numerous languages and remained one of Steinbeck's most studied and performed works, and goes up against The Grapes of Wrath as his greatest literary work. I actually first encountered this book in an English literature course at school. For me, this novella is very much a horror story, offering a far frightening glimpse into her humanity than almost any horror book. It's also one of the saddest things I've ever read, perhaps only challenged by Daniel Keyes' Flowers for Algernon, although tellingly, both these tales have a mentally handicapped innocent as their protagonist. Whilst reacquainting myself with the book for this video, I suddenly noticed a pattern. Out of the named characters, excluding Curly's wife, whose lack of name is itself symbolic, 5 start with the letter C. That's well over half, and even more striking given how little character variety the novella contains. Analysing the nature of the characters, it would appear to signify class or real-life archetype, of which the characters represent. Candy is living in fear of becoming obsolete. He represents the fragile intersection between utility and identity. He is the human metaphor for aging populations, the disabled, and the emotionally marginalised. The death of his dog, which is brutally dispatched for being no good anymore, functions as a proxy warning for his own fate. And seeing as this is 2025, it's also a proxy warning of our own fates in the coming AI apocalypse that threatens to make everyone redundant in both jobs and purpose. Keeping on with the C's, Curly is an insecure, violent and entitled young man who clearly hasn't been brought up correctly, like a lot of youths in the modern era. He doesn't know how to behave properly or control his temper, and is a clear danger to himself and to all others around him. He is an unpleasant individual with little redeeming qualities to speak of. He is the representative of all violent young men that plague society with their thoughtless actions. Curly's wife doesn't even get her own name. She's an object, a possession. She lives in a gender prison and is socially and spiritually isolated. She once had dreams, but was sabotaged by her own mother and men who manipulated her and took advantage of her naivety and young age. She has no autonomy and is emotionally starved. She represents women's limited roles in Depression-era America, the false promise of glamour as escape, and the cruelty of systems that punish ambition in the wrong body. She's a tragic echo of lost potential, silenced before she even got to speak her truth. Crooks, similarly, is contained by society's labelling. He's clearly racially restricted and marginalised as a human being. He's a wounded man navigating a system that dehumanises him. He's no saint, as he is made to suffer through no fault of his own, and during the story he shows pride without arrogance, loneliness without self-pity, cruelty without malice, and hope without delusion. He has limited prospects and seeks to escape the prison of his identity that society has burdened him with. Carlson is an emotionally blunt individual. He is a pragmatist with no room in his life for inconvenience or anything that's non-utilitarian, such as art and feelings. Candy's dog stinks, so it's got to go, and Carlson doesn't mess around in putting a bullet through its skull. He is a wage slave, and he represents every dour and mundane person out there who is but a cog in the machine and who has no capacity to stop and question whether allowances should be made for compassion, truth or beauty. So all the characters whose names begin with C are either damaged, restricted or morally ambiguous within the structural machine. Whereas the remaining characters, George, Lenny and Slim, all have phonetic texture and emotional softness that marks them out as outsiders of the system. They are agents of empathy rather than containment. And tellingly, George's surname is Milton, and Steinbeck was known to be a big fan of John Milton's Paradise Lost, which injects a whole new spiritual spin on the story. Beginning with George and Lenny is often recognised by readers as being like Eden in feel and tone. George represents the fallen man, someone who once believed in a dream, that is to say the dream of a farm, but is forced to confront the brutal realities of a broken world. His relationship with Lenny mirrors that of Adam and Eve, a unique bond in a world of separation that brings both joy and inevitable loss when tragedy strikes. By the end, George is exiled from his own Eden, left alone and spiritually adrift, just like Milton's Adam walking into a world of suffering. If George is the fallen Adam, then Lenny represents the part of humanity that is still tethered to innocence, sensation and dream. His name marks him as small in intellect, but vast in symbolic weight. He's the soul that doesn't fit society's rigid structure of hierarchy, and so society breaks him. The moment George takes Lenny's life, it reads not only as a tragic mercy killing, but as a symbolic offering, a blood-for-soul transaction within a corrupt, dreamless system. Lenny is the innocent whose sins are not his own. His death pacifies a world that can't hold purity. Candy's dog is euthanized earlier, which foreshadows Lenny's fate. The system richly removes the weak. The event even occurs with unconscious ritual components. The act is done in solitude, mirroring ancient sacrificial traditions performed away from the tribe. And George recites their dream one last time, a form of benediction, sanctifying Lenny's final passage. And even the Luger, which was the means of ending Candy's dog, reappears. It is not just a gun, but a ritual instrument of purification. So what are your thoughts on this sad tale? Which character did you like the most, and which scene did you find the most profound? Once more, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that bell icon for more deep dives into the world of literature. Until next time, keep reading, and remember, if you find yourself travelling from town to town with a bindle on your shoulder and a friendly giant who can't help but break or kill everything in sight, then perhaps you should just give him a tortoise as a pet. Now, it's time to make tracks. So long. Be seeing ya.